perfected moral unity, perfected knowledge and good conduct, safeguard of all the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shackled clan, I prostrate make offerings and yearn for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the one destroyer, the completely perfected knowledge and good conduct, scourge of all the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shackled clan, I prostrate make offerings and yearn for refuge. O most supreme Master human, who walk on this earth, you paced up 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you, O wise then, I prostrate. The pure body is formed completely pure, with the motion like a golden mountain, saying the praises of the three worlds. Pure and the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. To the supreme counsellor thrice falsely, colour like gold, to you I prostrate. Thus free like you, the three worlds above, incomparably wiser, to you I prostrate. The Saviour, heaven, great compassion, the founder of the world concern, the field of miracle qualities like a vast ocean, the wonder of worlds and shine prostrate, the creator of reason and perfection, the virtue that teaches one from the lower realms, the one path to the path of enlightenment, the dark that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who liberate and who also show the path of liberation, the holy field qualified with realization, who are devoted to moral precepts. To you, the sublime community, making nurturing, I prostrate. Homage to the supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, all three heavenly archangels, to all worthy of respect, crowned with bodies as many as all realms and mixed in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only correctly virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, the visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, in dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the 12 faults and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness and death. To page 15 for the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Chain. Thus did I hear at one time, the vagabond was dwelling in Passages together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the vagabond was absorbed in a concentration on the features of the multiple without cessation. Also at that time, the bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as excellent beyond nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the venerable Shakyamuni said this to the bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any southern living stray, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the venerable Shakyamuni. How should any southern living or lord of the living, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly in all those 5 aggregates also as infinite and imperfection. All resembling emptiness is all. Emptiness is not non-emptiness, all is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, or practice of the monks is so empty. Character is likewise all without emptiness. Without characteristic, nothing is blameless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Character is all emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, no intelligence, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mouth, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch that can form. There is no eye element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no raging
and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and harm. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear, and the completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of the Dharma. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three tribes also manifestly completely awakened, with unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, shall be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Kai Taragate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Ari Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadaputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans as sure as the Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Page 25 of the short mandala.
西对其中西灭道西念念颠巴地三界现界我的格南达西那个达三巴切南界去个卡拉金的金金三百日觉在嘛 Sanje Chana Sanje Chana Chanjo Bada Dani Jasum Lage Chujin Jive Sonam Ji Dola Benji Sanje Dobara Sanje Chana Sanje Chana Chanjo Bada Dani Jasum Lage Chujin Jive Sonam Benji Sanje Dobara Jo Sanje Chana Sanje Chana Chanjo Bada Dāgē chūcīṃ jīvē sānāṃ jī dōrlā bhēnjī sāñjē chōpar āngā dōsē nyūsāvē dāvā dōjī pāvē chirē dāmbē shūnē dēnsēvē kōdāṃ dēlā chācēl nyendē shīvā sānā gōshī nīshī dēnsē kāyīṃ pāṃ dōrlā phēmbā shīnā lākshī nīshī dēndē dōtsē wāk kāndā yāndā dēmē tūnā nāmbā kātē nāsā dē sōmbā nyendē shīshī sāmbē sūshī sāñjē kīnē yōm dēlā chācēl 아야 다 항저 꿀롱 검지 말해 해 꿀롱디다 배진 지나도 먼저 하고 그러다 근데 먼저 추년에디 대과 준비 추인자 추 대과 준비 추인비 빙고 말해 꿀롱디다 직 신라 신변기 군이란제 추년배이나 추년에디 대과 준비 추 차도고 그래서 맞아요 제단다 신변세디 아니 딱제라 삼로 금전 삼로 담면다 다나야고 직견냐 담아 되셔와 수수지 팬도 상상의 겨워가지 삼로든데 단제 심지 탐지 수술은 되어요 상상의 수수 내가 그 대화다 다도게 뒤두야 근데 이번에 상상이야 땡데 동반이 직직직 땡네 총 전장이 봐 근데 삼로다네 심지 탐지 랑라 되어요 랑라 그린 친구 임바데 하고나 아니 신데 심지 신이 된다서야 돼 신빙 로티에 야라다 먼저 뒤준 곰라 제공 세제로 얍 어디다 딘데가 삼마담이나 다 그래서 배저 망고 퇴 인자 먼저 망고 퇴 인자 삼로 상상 니마지인데 겨우가지 삼마다 야 니마지야 딘데가 삼마다 nimaji tsede da negap thadu khaw digi dubya chana nimaji ya tende yimbe chane tende samla chikulo maje kono tende ge ji gyumjen samda ma
Okay.
ne semnala aji da zu samanga la dewa yobo kyanya risha sa ngelo tende simji lewi na ne shende ji shemben ge kulon jese de ta semnala ya ne ji thoro le ya ta semnala
Things are.
어 근데 지금 예반이야 근데
Yep.
에션보레스
So, you probably all know about motivation, so that we should listen with good motivation is, that we are listening to great vehicle teachings alone is not enough. That one's mind has to have the beneficial intention or Mahayana motivation to match it. So now one needs to have an approach to the altruistic thought or beneficial intention with varied reasons. So one could reason that beneficial intention because of our connection over previous lives with sentient beings. Or one could reflect how sentient beings are kind to one in a temporal sense, but also in an ultimate sense. But also you could reflect on the interdependent nature of all things and emptiness and how everything is interconnected. And in that sense, recall the kindness of all beings as well. So here we're talking about doing an analytical type of meditation. So you've all heard a lot of teachings. So therefore, before you motivate with bodhicitta, it is good perhaps to alternate. Like one day you could reflect on the past lives. The next, past lives and the interconnectedness. The next day you could think on causes and conditions. The next day you could think on how sentient beings are the source of your temporary and ultimate bliss. And yet another day you could reflect on dependent arising. And then to think my mind is connected with all of those. And so therefore when you motivate the beneficial intention, then you'll have feelings, but you also have like a definitive ascertainment. Yeah. So please meditate like that. Rejoicing now that again the opportunity to hear such a text is wonderful. Rejoice in that.
Oh yeah. Now chai we have tea. Tuki. Yeah. Very funny. Today there is a communication, lost communication. Now I want to buy a cake and Buddha and Julia making cakes and then sometimes nearly 2 cakes. Now we don't have 1 cake. Communication. And today lunchtime I have stayed with some people, and then there one man he said he went yesterday supermarket, and oh, this is a
Just a cake today.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Sorry.
you know, ice cream
I have to
tea
put my
is no
glasses.
real good communication.
It's ice cream.
Ice cream and tea no good communication. Really? I finally I
Britta, can I have mine later?
Yeah.
I'll space out if I have the sugar. Thank you, son.
doing tea. Oh, you have different.
I have a different one.
Oh.
Oh,
So reaction.
Lama Sanje Lama Chu
Conditions.
Lama Kindu De Kunji Chevo Lama Di Lama Nama Chupa Gurus Buddha
Guru's Dharma, the Guru's.
What kind? Oh yeah.
Vanilla chocolate.
Vanilla chocolate.
Yes.
What? Oh really? Vanilla. Mm. Mm. Very nice. Mm. Yours is a vegan or?
Yeah.
A vegan is a very nice.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I have one time. Vegan. David, give me David. Birthday cake. Yeah, it's special birthday today. Ice cream. Vanilla ice cream. Oh, chocolate ice cream. Chocolate or no?
Chocolate and vanilla. Vanilla and chocolate.
Mm. Nice, isn't it?
Good ice cream.
Women?
From Kapiti. Kapiti, you know where cake is today?
Kabaddi. Made in New Zealand. Mm.
Some people still live there
Still,
in Kapiti.
still some people live there. Okay.
Yeah. If they have clairvoyance.
The online you there's a online who here? Who?
Who's online?
Who's online? Mori?
Murray?
Yeah, Murray, Caroline, Kate, and Nick.
Okay.
Oh, Nick from the West Coast.
Nick. Ice cream for you.
This is Bodhisattva's yoga. Gisla, eating ice cream. Bodhisattva's yoga.
Yoga, not yogurt.
Yeah, that's right, yoga. Yeah.
Online people can make it.
Maybe Kate missed this. We never had. We don't have. I don't know.
Oh, and Catherine.
Huh?
And Catherine.
Catherine.
Oh, Murray.
Oh. Melba cheese. Melba color. Melba.
Wow, wish
you.
wish you were here.
Wish you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not coming here.
So you got the loss because you didn't come.
We have another next week. We have more than like that. Maybe. Maybe more.
On the weekend we're doing a mindfulness class about food, isn't it? Yes, we should have had the ice cream at the weekend. Oh, we can make another one. That's right.
Catherine. Nick. West Coast Nick. One Nick coming, one Nick gone. Hi, that. Yeah. So
eat and listen and eat and listen. We'll carry on. Ale mambu dusa. Yeah, that's right. If we wait for everyone, then we'll lose the whole class.
Maybe eating ice cream's class tonight.
Yes.
How test? Where's it come from? Come from Kabidi? Or who's made? Or who's bored? Peter bored. Right, that. Now, so is in the tower, Tangi Kadu, Tangbodi, Lebnara, there was on Penata, she Kansang Dami,
Yeah.
Kansang Dami. And that the Kabdila, Umaranju, Tadu Sonza, Kansang Dami to be tower, Yanda with our chip. The new quality vegeta, Lamji. So the race, Chesan de any on the quality language so Kansantame to be tower Yanta what de, Tomato with the carres la yundi, and the la tower Gambergi. Any TV logjo, Kansantame lojo, Kansantado de tower, T. Zor Juve, and Jumzen Kashida, Jumzen Taman among Bajila Dene,
Okay. Yep. Okay. The realization of the non-self of persons, according to the Madhyamika Autonomous School, is the perfect view that takes one beyond the constraints of cyclic existence. We would say an excellent view because it acts to stop the view of a self of person, which is the view of a self of person being truly existent is mistaken. So, for example, that view is the source of many mistakes and hallucinations. For example, the self being permanent or the self having no cause and so forth.
타기생이 당연히 용단들라야네. 예와들. 로와 탕고 예와들. 네. 싫어하시는데.
나 이거리 탐보.
탐보.
야.
어디에 시나네다 기생
숨벌레.
숨바디 니버도 사오시. 숨바디다.
숙메네 시푸네로.
네. 베나 숨바디 가래라겐디.
기메바.
세대 텔라 뭔지 탈라던 배 따와. 대마를 데려와다 숨바디.
숨바디 디
뇽주.
디레기스 숨바디레.
젠도고 투. 뇽주.
기메바. 기요마레. 어디.
뭔지 다 담블리는 무디고서 덤바 투치. 니버디 젠도고 투치라.
알레오리샤.
숨바디 아니 뇽주고 투디.
알레기스라 오슬로 따따레. 숨바디르 와디.
숨바디 뇽주고 투디 조게스. 뇽주고 투카레스나. 숭메 아니 숭메네 시편에 아니 dollar 겨월 통성 가시기 뭐시 좀네서 대베스 랑게 류지 아마 중아마 간이 마마타메 랑게 류 아니 규메바 류베디 중아 삼디 삼디를 템바당 서거 차바다 롱라서베 류베디 중아 아니 주나면에 랭가당 대부 주지 루비디 중앙나면에 똑바들 되네 이 저디 가르스나 비간라야 수미 시제 삼디 니체 툭로 냠주고 툭세네 근데라 다건도 용단 딱바다단다 가르스나 수미네 시표로 수미네 마 시표 레벨 할기와 아니 근데 장성가시 수수게 네 뭐시게 따윤데 다다 뭐시게 두면 되는데 랑게 류지 규가마 봐다 송멜라 되어 말아 봐서 수 매베 인자다 락바티게 통고요 말아 수 통고요 말아 통게 매자 아니 ang에 류디 규민도스라 아니 인다 버레샤스다 어 규메발레 아니 류 규메데 중화 다베 따와 지단디 수수 마담의 김진지 아니
Okay, so we are, just to recap, page 130 of the text. So we start by looking at the divisions of these wrong views. And they're coming from three groups. 6 logicians, 6 proclaimers, and 6 meditators of absorptions. So that final set then brings us to the third division, which is on page 131. So it's points 9 and 10. So these practitioners, what happens is they die and they pass away from the formless realm, taking rebirth as gods of desire. And then some of them achieve clairvoyance and upon looking do not see a previous cause of their body. And this is through the power of their concentration. So they come to summate that the body has no cause. Because, if you're coming from like a formless realm, in that realm, there's no form. So you don't see it as having a cause. No special depends.
당ranzo nangba 가르디고 거래서와 쉬어버디 nangba 가르디고 거라는데 다 수미라 수락바디야 당ranzo 미기 류나시 통야인교 수락바 토야인교 톡바다 미기 통야인교 나 토야인교 디수디 요마레서와 남시 단다다 파진 테벌로 시샤 셰위나 남시 지고스디 셰바락바드메 쉬지겠다 셰바라문 셰바타메 탐치 지고요 말아 셰바락바드치 아니 류 단당한 수 미지 입다 가도다 토야다 톡바 토야다 입디요 근데 류디 매베 인자 딜라 sungme tanye shidan tere esirwa shidan ko namshi yorwa ko
Sungme kam korai.
sungme kando namshi bija yi namshi jigo yorwa namshi yinza di shiki yorwa di ranglo ge nangba sanje bayi na su ragwa mewa shiwe ten yorwa ta tonda dodo ra ten.
Yeah, so from the Buddhist perspective, when we talk about formless realm, we're talking about there not being like a limit that you can see of obstructive contact. From the perspective of the perfection vehicle, in this case, there's still a gross mind, but there's no like gross body.
이나 데 단다 참만남데 나가 겨워가지 기지 셰운데 아저 르이나 르기 년레고로 남시 그 르기 년레 지금 말아 숭메라 르요 말아 제단다 르라고도 요 말아 아니 미나레 되얼 할 게운데 르라고지 용거도 하다로 제단 르디기다 년레 교요 말아 베스로 데 저걸 이거 order와
But from the treatise Pramanavartika Valid Cognition, we have a dispute or a debate that arises because, of course, that being in the formless realm as a direct substantial cause of their mind has to be a previous consciousness, but they don't have a gross physical body. So the debate is, what then is the direct substantial cause for their, body? They don't have one.
다 이나가 저 딜링 거자고는 된다디 참만남데 남시 메베 남시 년레메 맞지 않도서로 남시 메베 남시기 아니 년레치도 말해서 배나 속 년레데라 인지미지 속 먼저 릭tumbal레데 위쪽으로라
Yeah.
아니 남시기 속 년레치도 말아봐 아니 이나 아니 먼저 미류다 되벨하게 류도 저기 아니 년레 가와요레스다 속내마 속면에 깨운데네 셰운데 델라 줘요 말해 숭메라 내가서 류기 년레데 메냐 페나 미날 단데 진예데 숭메 콘라 아니 되벨하 되베 미딘데 제적으로라 티케운데 되게네 풍부기 유인데 마가르데 되게 뉴바지어라 데 뉴바들 하데요 자 숭메 내가서 데 뉴바들 하데요 데마네 유인시제 용고요레스다 데 두스제드네 좀 용고요 말아 두스 랜드 두스 개고요레스다.
So then the answer is, of course, that, when changing from desire realm God or human to formless realm, the only cause of a latter consciousness has to be consciousness. But how is it that, what is then the cause of that lack of form, or is there a cause? So, for example, when the humans are born into the or the desire realm gods are born into the formless realm, there is no form aggregate. But what happens is, before they take birth in that formless realm, that aggregate of form is suspended. Yeah, so it's non-manifest. It exists in potential.
다지 딩원가 탈라템 바스 야 따용디 수메제도 다 민도스라 직체로.
Right, so that is one cause why the formless, gods could look up and see,
다디네 치메 탈라템 바스 시와디라 치메 탈라템 바사데 아니 치르베 장송 외시된 템바가시스 치르바 힌두들 신두들 신내톱는 외시도 외시가 야야야 따용디 아니 직den게 타 직den게 타세 직den게 다 직den 가는 단다 덤블링 직den 제로 되게 탐에 타디 통고요 말다 와 탐에 타 딘데지네서 다 마체도 되고 가는 덤블링 디 직도도 디젤 가는 거 통고 말아라 마다 따연디 배낭 가는 덤블링 디네 남시질 직 토르스는 디젤 양자 수 덤블링 용구 요와도 건조 통고 매빈자 아니 직den라다 타체시 인두스르와
Okay, so then after that, there are some non-Buddhists who view the wind and rain to occur adventitiously, and that flowers and fruit on trees occasionally passed and occurred adventitiously. This is viewed based on logic. Again, not seeing a cause. So having or not having a limit, the next set. the shiparwa. The four that propound possessing and not possessing a limit. Some non-Buddhist sages, through their clairvoyance or concentration, say, I shall explain the limits of the world. However, at the time of seriously seeking it, thinking, I shall explain it, when they recall the eon of destruction, then discrimination that a limit existed arose. When they recalled an eon of formation, then the discrimination that a limit did not exist arose. So there are some who see like a destruction, but don't see a formation after that.
다디 얘네양 가시던데 개와파 직도도 타매버 타요버 차도도 서로
Yep.
다야 개와야 차용도 야야직래용도 야 타매버리 도도세요 로 개와만 원것이 통고요로 또 따데디 점링디 마직 제도도 타도스다 어다디 내가서 점링디 타직 차도 지딘 감디 타마데리샤 다양양원식 도단디 양 개와야 차용도 다 양자야 내용도 다 타매리샤스로 야 어딘데스다 수수 수수 시제도 그러와 먼저 말한조이나다 롭종체 도마준인데다 단다다 이제 참 공부단 주주 송신교디 단다디 시베시 디레섬 다 이제체 되고 그러면서 수수 생기 등이 신경요 말아 치료부 당선도 뭐시기도 수수 하고 요라 하고도 다 디레샤 타다 타체버리셔 양 타매버리셔 어딘데스다 고 생기 똑배 공기 기지 쉐인 거 레스티로
Yeah, so these views of the non-Buddhist are coming through their clairvoyance and insights, because through their discrimination, sometimes they will see the world come to an end, but they will not see a formation. Or then on the other case, in some lives, they might develop the same clairvoyance, but not see an end, but only see a formation. So for us, when we study, we are just thinking that this is something that Buddha set forth, but these non-Buddhists, these yogis, actually see these states with their clairvoyance, and they definitively decide or summate these discriminations of a limit or no limit.
어디 뭔가 탈라템베 따와 집단지 당어디 치매 탈라템베 따와세들이도
Yeah.
나와디 다드스 정원딘데 더더레시다 로마창와 당사 또뱅원뱅 아제진 로마창
Alatisco gisla ngapa
나와도
di lala
치매 탈라템베 따와제세들다
aleorisha di ngapa di la pangamarwa
디마레
aleon.
자디 이마질라크로와 디리오 다당이 아니데 스투도 시셔로
Yeah.
이제 당기 단달라야 돼네 응원이 탈라템바지 다 치매 탈라템바서야 돼
Okay.
로마창와 당 또뱅오면 아제진 로마창와스나다 수술로기 롭종 마체베체로
Alatisco gisla di chikla nyawala matong dang samden shipa nenche dang menche diche labda
디디로와 가서 콜레스데
di angi shipa rang
시오마
ta yeba dang mebani chuksum shipa kalsena kashikla samden shipa yenche la matong kashikla nyawala matong di labdi membe.
디 단다디로와 가서 청진이 이제 되려라도 좋은 좋죠 수민의 시은 되려져 타선 것이 영어시 돈이나
Yeah, takar gyatso tayang takparso udu di labdi membe.
제가 어디 남에 데데를 시바들이다 시바들
Wadi.
시바디 다디로와 가서 치료에 타선 것이 되면 것이 왠지 차고 줘야네 착배 깨워 템베 세 타메베 두시 총을 해서 봐. 되네 양한테다 양한테다 유 자주 타라 양타고 초나 워드 날메 멘체디마도 다 점블링다 두도 다연도 간선지레 이다 그네로 같은데 통 아니 냐외 내도 통고요 말이다 봐. 냐와 날메 세더라.
Yeah.
나 도좀마도 아니 띵르야 당데 띵도 삼디 시워 연제 마도 봐.
Yeah.
야 삼디 시와 이제 마통 마니 가서 그래다 냐와남이 두서 마통 마치 다 대가를 탐지 네 파르세베 네 타마동아 디세 워당 띵드 타유베 두시 총으로서 제가 수수 마통에 인제인다 디네 타지르셔 마 타지 디끼데 가서 두스러 디 공라야 삼디 시와당 수미 속당 두서 수미의 파샹에 삼디 당문이와 두서 야마동 강라야 띵라 마 네 냐와 남이 두서 리두서 마통 다 어느 직딩 뉴주기 직딩 감들 서고로 네 파르데라 여된 여 다랑 레샤스타디 대주수 시제가 독식이요라
Okay, so the next page on 132. So we've been going over the fourth of these 5 groups of incorrect views, isn't it? So the fourth one was propounding whether there was a limit or not to the world and so forth. So the 13th and 14th are that the practitioner, the yogi, they're seeking limits. But when they look below, they might only see as far as the craving spirits, the hungry ghosts. They might not see the hell, the Avicii. But when they look up, they don't see anything above the 4th concentration. But we know that our world is made up of more breadth than that. So what they are summating, what they're concluding is from their discrimination. So what they conclude is that in the sideways directions, they did not see a limit where the horizon was exhausted, but they did above and below.
세상 디 단당하란서 좀 된데 루주를 따연데 좀 된데 루주나라 또바지연도 장가라 네 당고 수수 류게 류게 뒤된데 장가자도야 신의 톱 네데 톱연도 장가 땅에 가랑 류게 난게 뒤디게 장가자도
Yes.
안디네 파바바디 치지된이 감도서 상마베 아니 지 요바와 툰르 내가 디게 간데 요 안디네 이다 내가 튼데 간데 디네 냐외 내가 튼데 간데 요와 디게 통 안디네 야수 수네 삼제 당고 니와 수가 시와두시야 제 나가다 남시데 제메 리두 장가라 아니 치르버도 지나 타부터 버렸으라고라 다도 곰자는데 단도 디간라 단질 하데버도 통는 치다 제단데 이 좀된데 그 로주나라 똑바제단 그 뭐데 송유데 다다 로그더러
Yeah. Now in this context of being able to see the world in its entirety, if we look at the history of Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment, it's very first he had insight into his body through karma abiding practice and could count the number of atoms in his own body, but then went on to look and examine the external phenomena of the world. So for example, the different realms would be examined with discrimination, such as the animal realms, hungry ghosts, hells, looking in one direction, but also then going on to the upper worlds. So in that case, what we're starting to examine the form realm, going up from the 1st to the 4th concentrations, at which stage some non-Buddhists would have thought that is the liberated state. But we know from the history of Buddha's enlightenment that he said no. Still, once you're at that 4th concentration, some self-grasping still remains and has not been uprooted.
단다디 시줄라여로 시줄라 하고라지나 nenjo chadewa jewa dharamsala chadewa sechila khurangki lo yunan lawa dinde songda sa ani ndiya shine mare tanda tsa umen nala long shu yung dirwa long de tsa umen nala shubha dhagarangla ani bede susu sugu nange dyuren chazang ta nga thanga jatu sarisirwa dindegi tokwa nyam yung gudu sirwa ani dine yungwa za ma se ani ji kharso gore ta 직denji 감 상마 수수 미기 틸레 여버도 지와 상마 수수 틸레 여버도 시 나와 샤기도 제단디 나가야 또바 조링기 또바 뒤에서 같은데 롱 우메나라 쇼용도 냠딘데 용구도 송구도 하셔다
그래서 저그램으로 봐.
디 두두다 냠랭 도비 딘데 뭐니 토야 다 딘데 토요인데 아니 오늘 닝지 제다 두두 쉬우지 레라고 차르고서라 동해다 표적이 생각도 통용 거라 동해 가서 유매 강에 가서 아니 닝지 베드 대와도 베드 쉬우지 그다고 제야라 쉬우지 견자 겨와 요데 세월이더라.
One great meditator in Dharamsala, Situla, the Geshe-las met, he explains something similar. When the winds entered the central channel through his practice, he could count the atoms of his body, almost like count them in their entirety. But not only that, through that stage of equipoise, it's like the world is gathered right in front of you. You know, the whole world system is close at hand. There is that appearance. So this is said to be one of the attributes of Tantra completion stage practice. When the winds enter, abide and dissolve or merge in the central channel, then it must be the case that you could not but have compassion by seeing what you would see, and because you would see the suffering of sentient beings, and your love would be of such quality, strange but also really differentiated to Nomayamba Kepa. When we close our eyes, everything's kind of dark.
로조 마체 냠레 마체 로고 도보 냠뇨메니 네 도보 ngombe ngaje jensidu ngaje shoye den yorwa 도보 ngombe ngaje sidu da nga 신기 요 nga tamma nga 하고 yes ro 어딘데 예베게 네 딘데 요와 당스로 로 창와 넘버 로 창장로 로게 다 줄롭종 제장 망해 버스디 베 최도 또 마도 로 로마창와 ngaje 로 창장 유디 망해와 또 뭐득도 아니 샤와진신 군도몽과 시스다 샤와진신다 가서네 몽베 남바진 와 근데기 아니 ngombotewe lamji gewada migewa tangsa ngeleji lam temba shile tsamdi tiba na ani tiba namla sa lende sewo midewe na ani tamlung lo gurshin dagi lhami gong yino sinyam tawa wasa chedan da di chomden de la tanda di lungma tawa di yen mangbo la lungma denga tawa sigo ra chedan duzo rangzo gyuyo mares lawe ina ngone sina di tawa lokmara wa lokdar wa ni di lung de tembara ngone lung tawa lung ding tawa ra ta yo mares lawe ina konzo ke kharusana 수수 롭좀 마제바 아니 롭좀 제냐 쉬 마도가 아니 ngajeje 아니 쉬어 하장 띠무고 딘데기 유베 줌진지 아니 겨와다 미겨와다 이제 딘시 따지 덴바시다 따 딘데 남샬로 뭐초 계지시 코란즈 다도 되게 따와디 탐부 쉬지 신데도 좀 된데기 최 송제로 아니지 타버터야 당 딘실레 잠바당 딘데는 발렌 용고라 송고라 딜라 펜도치는 용고야 말다 펜도하지 가서는 콘소 따와디 타고 쉬지 셈나는 딘데게 요라 딘데게 전에 펜도 매비 인자 아니 티워티워 상말라야 직된 타여베 요마레 아니 다 요레 요마레 딘데 랍제 요인데 딜라 레마 자와슈라 아니 딜라야 아니 lungmading tawase tiwa lungdi tiwa lale lungmading adila gorda.
The next set from 15 to 18 deals with abandoning or not abandoning a god. So here the 15th, one whose mind was not trained. This and the second one, 16, one who had manifest conceptual pride, one whose mind was trained but did not ascertain. So you studied but you didn't ascertain the truth, and one with knowledge but was completely confused. So here it is stemming from these practitioners' beliefs. Some non-Buddhists would not abandon their pride or their view. They would not abandon their God, as it were. In actual fact, Shakyamuni Buddha taught the path to liberation very clearly about not clinging to a self. But when such questions were asked of Buddha, oftentimes they're called non-specified because Lord Buddha saw that in the continuums of these beings that we have just been through, their views were so thick. Questions that they had, such as, does the world have a beginning or an end? Does the self truly exist or not? Lord Buddha's unspecified from the point of view of the question, and that Lord Buddha didn't see any benefit in answering them. So that's it.
다 뒤에 되네 다 니와 두바들 들어가다 두와 다 여보 망고 시에버디 두두 다두 뉴상글라 아니 두시에 요마와나기 주룩제 다와 주룩제라 두시에 매와남기 게제 니메데 마와스데 두시에 요와다 매와 니가 마인베 마와 주 게제 아니 체와 마와스데 다 제가 규요 말에서는 체와다로 아니 두인체 세디니레 넘버 세디니레 초와 마와남기 마 딘데스타 야와츠
So the next, there are a lot of divisions. The next set of 5 are with regards to the 44 views that conceptualize the limit of the end. So 16 that propound essence of discrimination, 8 that propound non-existence of discrimination, 8 that propound neither discrimination nor non-existence of discrimination, 7 that propound annihilation, chitta, and 5 that propound liberation from this life. Say digi nampartoa. Dis narwadi, dizinga.
dizinga doe. Dishemewana chudukchi je jene do.
Yeah.
Machi. So to limide.
Legadu gishla shibshibshi.
legda. 다 당보 주도에 대해서와 당보들이야 네 디시 요마는 주룩도와 주룩도 가래 라인데 다 속단 덴버에 다 저단 다 뒤와 다는 좀 거다
야
근데 같이 단다디 치료에 대해서 시거라 다 속단 덴버에 속단 덴버 말에 다 속단 덴버는데 니가레 니가 많이 바르베 뒤와체 아니 다 타단 덴버 다 타단 덴버에 타다 미덴버에 니가레 니가 많이 바르 야, 다 대화대 임바래. 동해 임바래. 니가래 니가 많이 임바래. 아니 제 유시진이 뭐지? 다 직부 임바당 타대 임베. 아니 임베니 체와 임베 두시 디나면서 주로 두 최송하대.
So
기저 디망고 가르시나 마시나 참말로 다디 요시샤체 요레 요마레 대화 요레 동해 요마레 스튜어티인 거다. 유산 좀 되게 될 렌즈는 겨겨요 말다. 겨요 말다. 제가 건조 다데 롱마데를 샤스네. 롱마데 다워. 유산데 지월 레모 롱 지월 레 롱마데 슬라메시. 어디라고요라.
So here these non-Buddhists are revolving these questions, these views, 16-fold. The first they would ask, does self possess form or not? Or is it not possessing a form, or is it both or neither? The first set of 4. The second set, does the self have an end? Does it not have an end? Is it both and as neither? Then is the self, having the discrimination of the self as happiness, or is it suffering, or is it both or neither? Those having the discrimination of self as one, as different, as small, and as immeasurable. So the essence of all this is that these 16 views are all coming because these practitioners allude to a truly existent self. And Lord Buddha didn't answer specifically. It was unspecified terms of the answer to these questions.
다 아니 매워만 원는 지게서야 돼. 이거대로 다 숙진 임바래. 아니 두시 매버래. 제번에 아니 다 타단 템바래 미덴바래 니가 많이 바래 쓰지네. 게들이다.
All right, so then there's the lack of discrimination, 2 sets of 4, isn't it? Oh no, excuse me. 8, just 8. Yeah. Sorry, Gisli, yeah. The 8 ranging from there's no discrimination of the self as having form through to there's no discrimination of the self possessing an end and not possessing an end, both and neither. 2 sets of 4 make 8. Yep.
다 니메드 마와 제세야 되다래. 나마 제부 티니라 두시 여바야 많이 두시 매바야 많이 바시서 주카줄네네 다와제도 샤레로.
Right. The third set, the 8 that propound neither discrimination nor no discrimination are the 8 views obtained above by affixing there's neither discrimination nor no discrimination, and so forth to the previous 8.
이제 두시 여다 매세야도 단다디 단다디 치료받도 두시 매베 뇽주스라요인데 되나가라. 아니 다요 켈링 주고라. 이나야 디네가라 두시 촌두라 왜 두시 버와. 디요 말베시베 되로 디잔 두시 매버서야 돼.
Okay. So this is from the point of view of absorption, because although these people set forth a self, when they're in that absorption, there is no, does the discrimination exist or not? Because there's no gross manifest sensation and feeling. Yes.
다디네 체험하고는 이dun세야 돼. 시버들이도.
네.
다 되베 미당 하당 니제와. 네 숙제 숨제. 아니 숨에 감시로 삼대 당문이와 숨바시와. 뒤에 dü인데라. 아니 dum본당라 마시파드 내단 채와래. 숨의단 채와래. 아니 얘네 유메스네 당문에 여와래 매바래 어디든지 즉 내다 유메 되베 밀라 내다 유메스 아니 지 류단 테마데세로 와 두즈체 아니 신의 예매버세도서 수메도서라다 달리고요라 수메도서다 맨 두시메베 내가라 가면 요소로 차르데 남시 잼에는 가면 요소를 차르고라 안 두즈 매버베 컨데레스 투어티인데 어두슬라도 dü인디도 레션레도
7 views of the human beings of the desire realm, the gods of the desire realm, the gods of the form realm, and the 4 types of formless realm sources as being with sickness, boils, and pain until they die, and to be utterly non-existent upon dying. So do these annihilation, do these completely disappear? Or are they non-existent upon death? Or for example, Dushimeba.
두시메버스 초와
숙매감.
손들으시 숙매감로 숙매 두시메버서야 돼.
Yeah, so because the formless realm gods cannot 가서 가르치는 다체bre 숙매감된서
콘솔라디요 말와 가서 초와다 두시라고 해도 매우 인자는 디샤용 것으로.
Yeah, they might say that the self is not existent because they can't discriminate gross feelings and sensations.
다디네 츠디니레 트바 마와남지 나샤도와 나와티르와.
Yeah, that's the one.
나와드가서나 되베윤데라 제메데 주베 츠디니레 트바도. 다 되베윤데 제메제도 동해망고 쇼지용 거로 데레 츠디니레 트바다와스 디베나 이 덴데 요르 가서
힌두 요기 가서
힌두도 저기네 덴데 다와드니 직체 삼대 톱에 체디니레네 트바 다와시 와 삼대들라야네 삼대 당문이 와서 뭐 쉬어요라 이 간라 아니 되베 윤들 좀 트와지네 되는 거 차송하대.
So this 5th set, then those that set forth that liberation can be obtained from this life, the view that one can attain liberation in this life by enjoying without abstaining from the good qualities of the desire realm. And the 4 views that one can attain liberation from this life by attaining the 4 concentrations. Yeah, so one can attain liberation in this life by attaining the 4 concentrations. They believe that. Some Hindu yogis. That's a very strong view amongst some Hindu yogis. Do.
Dushi Yowamawa Namji Juruk Dosa, any Medanimi Jeje, Chawamawa Namji Dun, Sedinile to Master, Domdi Dada de Gandhi Dosmat.
So now the above can be summarized. The above 44, isn't it? 16 propound the existence of discrimination. 8 each propound no discrimination in neither. 7 that propound annihilation, and 5 that propound liberation in this very life.
Tadine dila danda dishik do tangye tuju zanyiwa de da tuen tuju kone sheba chas di doade.
Do. Disebudu.
Odi tadi chanzo beje razonga.
Now this next point is all of these 62 views are to be understood by way of 6 categories. Is everyone together on page 133 now at the bottom? 6. Causes first, and that which precedes, the support, time, views on which they're supported, and what's the source of the views?
아니 디다 유디르다 하단데 치료를 라나 말라나 나란줄래 요르디 디 이건저 디 나란주 곰자 삼다나 아니 나란주 다치 차단다 콘도다 강에다 망부시우지 당부 나란주 망부지기 미디 책든데 시에네 미디 든데 시에네 나 동의 총서 팅도 알아 다디바 삼로데 스타인데 아니 수수라 차과당 당화당 아니 차도당 마제당 딘데 숙침벌 되네 동해요디 싱기더라 다 뒤에 마상로당인데 뒤에 다지 자와로디 풍불에 마스니 들어 풍불에 된시에 란제베 마 딘데질레 되네 말라 디코스 말라 디모고 말라 직시기도 말라 니시기도 용고도선 디 시저텔레 되네 중앙지 한도 하고 그더라 제산디
The first one, the cause, is the view of the transitory collection, which is an afflicted wisdom which, in dependence on the 5 aggregates, grasp at there being a substantially existent I and mine. So, as I mentioned just before, all of these questions of views coming from non-Buddhists are stemming from this notion of a self. And whether we label Buddhist, non-Buddhist, we have all of those views as well. We have them. Because when we meditate, if we really examine, and remember, something comes in our mind, then, someone said something and it made you suffer. But then if you think a bit deeper, then the reasons you're suffering about what someone said is coming from your afflicted desirous attachment, your aversion, your jealousy, which creates suffering. But that suffering in turn has a root, which is thinking that there is an autonomous, truly existent I separate from the 5 aggregates. Believing that. Yes.
최로서고 퇴방원도 좋아. 세상당 안도 최년세기 최 담바만 임바스데. 아니 기우 담바. 근데 배 최로고 신이. 와 당연히 제가 딘데게 쳐 와 직된 거 보여레스 알아서 직된 뉴주 탐제 아니 유니버시티 에너지를 충원이 레스로
Yeah,
딘데
yeah.
람니드서다 담아마이 배쳐 되는 건데 따와도 연구로
So here, that which precedes those views is the second point. The hearing of non-excellent doctrine preceded these bad views. So non-excellent doctrine. Kishla Yangyur Labda, please. Say again.
담바마인 바스
Damba Mayimba, no?
담바마인 바스 최양다고 신이마인 바스다
Okay.
어디보시나
Essentially, it is one who doesn't know a valid doctrine. So we could follow. Yeah, Pena.
베나 단당하나서 점블링기 에너지를 지지지 신이든데 더 낭바 일람나 아 유니버시티 에너지 유니버시티인데 더디 유니버시티 에너지 개말 수술래 되네 좀 전자로 와 유니버시티 에너지 세 가야 돼
Yeah, so there could be like a view that there's this kind of, things come from like a universal energy without really understanding karma, that there's cause and effect.
다 단에 딜레 파 디스나 아니 단당한서 디 고든베 예도 몽보도 단다 디 건서 힌두기 따르디 셰요 되네 건서 창마 셈디 누가 셈 창마 찍버레 셰기도
Yeah,
어두즈 따와드다 담마마인 배추 년발 때네 따와드 용거다
yeah, and sometimes when we go to teach in Golden Bay, some of the views there prevalent with the Hindu view that the mind is like one with all, there can be that type of
디 암전나라 코 아니 디심나는 야데 오라다
yeah, so one hears that doctrine and one holds it in mind.
그래서 최퇴사당 최퇴니당 최신이당 저 삽삽치고야 돼 제단디 개침부려도 돼
That's why we need to take care with ourselves as listeners, but also with the teacher that's teaching and also the doctrine they're imparting. Those three.
숨바디 뭔도 도와줘 숨바 댄스야 되더라 숨바디 댄
Third one is the support.
댄스야 돼 댄다 또게 댄바스 댄스 되다 베나 댄바스나 되게 댄바 또게스나 네 단다레다 에 겨왕아지 요 말에세로 레준데 요 말에세로 아니 단다 또게 버스 다 된대기 수수수 금진 삼로시 단제로와 아니 다솔 이슈 솔 요레세로 악마 요레세로 직된 타다 덴바레세로 한 직된 밤 빅밤을 되는 중으로서 또게 차르다 그봐 이제 지고라 등산 전물리 미모지 모던 스틸러 이제체 통매기 전물리 빅밤을 대 또게 오르와 대 또게 오르와 근데 덴바스도 거기다 안아서 거를 베나디 미나 이슈 그쵸 힌두 그쵸 지수 상마 덴바르와 디 덴바 델라 쇼나 한 따왕에 버지기도 알아 이슈 쳐라 쇼나 이슈 쳐 따와 남배 쇼라 쇼나 남배 쇼 따와 리그로 하시다 디 덴바디 쇼사디 야고질 마쇼나 냠바질 쇼나 되게 신 쇼도 알아 어디 시그 덴다 독일 덴바스
땡땡 떡이
덴시도 그 덴바 빼는 거라서 남바선지에 쳐디 롱 덴바라고 하지
Okay.
독일에서도 대마 신이 간산지어로 아래 막 계제 신이지어로 디 말에 람니지어로 다 기겐 로벤도 독일
So here the support, these bad views are supported on teachings and logic. So you have like the support or the teachings, but also you have the person that's imparting them. This can have like a twofold thing, this third point. So, for example, some would teach that past lives do not exist, or that there is no karma. And if you heard that and believed that, that could be a support that supports your view, or that the world has a limit. Or some people might say the Big Bang is it, the formation of this universe in terms of the limit formation. So that means the Christian doctrine and the Hindu doctrine will both have particular views, and if you follow the people that teach that, you will get these supports. And if it's mistaken, you need to take care.
다 시와디 투르도
Yeah.
아래
Yeah. The fourth one is time.
투 컨데레스디 대와당 다대외 툴레미네 뭔지 타도 좋아 다 타도스라 뭐메 타도스 한번에 지는 아주 타요 말아 통마메 வர와 이나 대와당 다다월들 뜨네 네 타지 도스텔라 뜨스니로
Yeah.
다야 지금 마음보다 이제 툴레미네 치메 타도 그러 마음벌미디 어딘데시도 타도스 수수지 금제들 때는 지금 디펜제데 토마도베데 타도스래 뭐래시나 타메로 직된지 감데 타메레 말한저 셰베기 준데 타메레 뭐보 탐제기 제기 윤야야야야야르나 타메요 통마 토다 메버레 이나야 고 대와담 다다월로 되네 지메타면데 타도스 망월면데 어디 타도 라이스도 디 툴레 되네 아니 다운이 뭐 총어디 시거다
And these erroneous views also stem from one's view of time. Upon observing the past and present, one conceives of a former limit, and upon observing the future, one conceives of a latter limit. But in reality, when you think on it, there's no beginning and end. Well, it is just that we cannot see reality, so we posit a kind of a limit, former limit, and a latter one. But in fact, if you examine both the mental consciousness and also these external, what are they called? Substratum things, both of those don't have a limit.
나와디 따월을 때문에도
Yeah.
따와디 딱바다와다 채바다 딱바다와스디 다 딱바레스 와 직된이 감 딱바레스 채바다와스디 아니 유요 말레스 교왕지요 말레스 레준데요 말레스 어디 딱바다 채바다에 따와디리로
Die Kannestungen ist die nicht.
베나 딱바다와라 되네 아니 따옹이 뭐 용구로 직된이 감 딱바레스 다 딱바레스 레디네 따옹이 뭐 용구로 채바다에 유요 말에 교왕지요 말란 딜레디네 야 따옹이 뭐 제 용구로 어디 시고
These bad views are supported on the views, the fifth point, the views on which they're supported are permanence and annihilation. So if you believe the world is permanent and the self is permanent, erroneous views come from that. And lastly, if you believe that there is annihilation, that nothing exists, the world doesn't exist, and sentient beings don't exist, or like that, also mistaken.
다디 냥엘레 대회 탈라 템버 따와서야 디페진 딘스레 베나간조 낭바산제베 치라마와도 저기 향미 냥엘레 대도 리버 준체로 그랬으라고 여러 어디서 따와도 냥엘레 대회 탈라 템버 딘스레도 스타디
And the view based on nirvana is that some believe that once nirvana is attained, the mental continuum is, what's the word? Stopped, ceases.
단다디 탤런트 저 콘주 다시 뭐 캘린식도 상면령엘에 대해서 리버 준체와도 캘린식이 여러 근데 데이터와디 냥엘에 대해 탈리데 따오래 되라 아니 단다 탤런게 다좀바지 산제 제도 와봐
야
산제 제스도 다 산제 냥엘에 대해서래 아니 리버 준체에서는 산제 대요 말아 슈에요 다 콘주 가리이 나서 가서 따오데 가서 산제 게 제기도 들어 디 산제 제도 와봐 탤런게 다와지 다좀바토네 아니 산제데 냥 공부냥엘에 대한 로니돈 학습도 살아 단도 숙대여라 리버 준체 냥에 되나 리버 준체에서는 간산이 요 말아 제가 이 냥엘에 대해 타서데 팀메기 되나라 다디셰게요라 그런저 루데다와리 냥엘에 대해 탈레데 메타와세데 진치라메베기 디 상민냥데 디셰기 있으라
This view of tenets of the extinguishing of the continuum at nirvana was quite prevalent in Thailand, but one Thai practitioner got the fruit of arhatship and actually saw Buddha and then questioned, well, how can it be that Buddha is still kind of there if Buddha was supposed to have ceased at nirvana? Then he came to question that view, that view they held because Buddha was 2,500 years before.
그다음에 디 텔렌 라든데 다좀버 토버스니 카시 던데 두가로
Yeah.
텔렌
Do.
두가 던데 두가 다좀버 토버스는데 제야
Yeah.
예서
There are some Thai practitioners who have the fruition of arhatship. You can meet them.
다드네 두버디 기베네 남 시버차스 기베네서 두버디로
Yeah.
삼데 솔라 데네 기와셔
This-
삼데 솔라 데네 삼데 당문이와 숨바 시바요로
Yeah.
덴델라 데네 아니 기와셔 기베네
The sixth is the source from which the views arose. It could be generated in dependence on the dhyanas, the concentrations, first, second, third, fourth, and so forth.
지난 그 삼데 당기들 레송 삼데 야 게윤디 아니 수수 나르게 류드서 대샤스 코르 란자르와 통윤디 냐마 나랑게 아우제젤 하도스 대샤스
Vale.
콘조 다고레샤스 데 다고레샤스 나 노마드 란자 탄다 대샤스 라구다로
Yeah.
디게네 도비데 네들 기베 도비데 시윤디 아니 나 다왕 엠바데 기용고라 디시고
Yeah, we talked about some gods that were reborn, but then generating clairvoyance and seeing that their contemporaries that were still in the god realm were still existing. So then they thought, oh, they're permanent. But actually, it is due to the transference of their birth that they would think such, and that is mistaken.
다디 도리스로 듀뉴 나서 뒤균 다추 베저 로야도 베저 양타고지 로야 미추니 세기겐도 기겐 양타고지 있는 로 랑가 만나버지 니야 개체슈디 곰 망부gebje 다음에 있어야 되다 유에다메 간가 삼노다마도 나네 언저 가리는 다 여시샤 이제 최제위네 기와 시다차 두고요 말에 다 나 다도 저 인사명은 최제신한데 코베 주로 차이인가 더라
Yeah.
그래서 다 나서야 돼 유에다메 삼노다지 당부 그 실행경이라서 초응어 그런 게 레일하고든데로 강의든데 중대 남산 삼노 가르치기도 미팅 알아든데 랍스 지지 남산 찍들리기도라
Yeah.
딩문에 레베스랑 다니는데 아니 수수 셈나라야 수수 지를 가외 줌제다 마가외 직직 가외 줌제 통인데 콘도사금도 알아 마가외 줌제 통마다가 삼무지 다니는데 아니 미베저데 가르치나에 콘도사원이 레용도 알아 디스스드네 착과다 당원사데 여치네 용구도 다디 칸에 용도 마삼 다니는데 스니디 지난데 몽보 마리볼인데 총을서데 디 파장 잡잡라요 되어 당번이 나서야 되네 근데 나데 간데 상담인데 하나 되면 단다디 단다 란자와들에 란자와데 뭐선스나나 디 잡들 단다 나랑은에 듣든 유직이었다 아니 대시 칸에 땅데는 몽바 마리바 되네 다죠 단데데 다데 마리바 되지 들어와 이네 다디 잡을 단도 파
Alea.
몽부 삼단지 유에돼 봐지
Yeah.
근데 삼단하네 아니 거네 곰 야고다 두스 쳐나네 가서 그래다 지 추에 집에 먼저 좋아하러 가지 다 추역이 지 가서 진럽다 가지 셈나라서 레투브로 가지 단다 도도 다운 게 뭐 용단데
Yeah.
즉 야야 뭐 혹시나 마시는 거 근데 지금 상무 다는 야 우여리라
The long and short of the essence of all these understanding all these mistaken views, or we would say bad views, is to try and find a quality teaching doctrine and a quality teacher, and then do your own meditation on the notion of self. Does the self truly exist or not? There's a danger that if we go about clinging to a self too strongly all the time, it will thicken our experience of a self in cyclic existence. But it's important to try and differentiate, and in that case it's difficult to point out the reality because it just becomes thicker. But if you do an analysis at times when there are times when things are going well and you don't have anger, but there are other times when things don't go so well and you're annoyed and you get angry, and then you can trace that back to this mind that's always going kind of like and don't like. Desirous attachment and aversion. So the mind is constantly discriminating that. And why does that happen? That's coming out of this strong notion of I. We have this strong fixation of I, which of course underlying that is ignorance, but the way the I is appearing to us is as if it's non-dependent, autonomous, inherently existent. Of course, ignorance is behind that. But it's very important when we meditate and if we can meditate and get some notion of that, understanding of that, then we'll get the Dharma taste and the blessings.
Oh yeah, that is that you know the drilling the gang the manguage thought in Israel. The wall the Tao Judu the Tunze Tuji Kone Yawachi Sesto.
True.
Or the Tunze Tudi the Samash Tantan Yavudara.
Yeah.
Gandhi the Malanadi, the Tunze Tudi.
Ale o disha. Penagudam.
Tunze Tudi the Rere drilling Yawachi Totuna.
Yeah.
Idea Wudadi.
So in the discussion, because the way that we went through it was kind of scattered with lots of divisions, it would be good if we discuss these 6 main points, like the cause, that which precedes the support, the time, the views, and so forth in the discussion.
Tua, you know, Tua.
Question now?
Only notation.
No.
Question sleeping?
I have a question.
Yes.
It says that these views are supported by logic.
Yes.
It seems kind of illogical that, because, from our perspective, it's not logical, is it? But,
Yeah, where did it say that, Philippa?
Page 134 at the top, number 3.
and so I'm
Oh, it means their logic, doesn't it?
yeah, what sort of logic is that?
Again, the truck number somebody the Dan Wadi.
Then
Dan the Chilopagi
Tembatan.
Temba Tang Topa the Konzo Rikpa Chedang. Konzo Rikpa Chedang La Tenek of the Tower to the Philippa Gitiwa. The Philippa's question is, I see. Philippa's question is, how can that be logic?
No, and because it can be debated by a higher and better logic.
Konzo Rikpa Sema Yenayang, the Gangla Captain Sema Yomarawa Konzo. Yeah, the Gangla Captain Sema Yobarawa, Sangi Chamdende. Seba Yensang, the Kandis logic labgare Rikpa.
The Tanda Diro, Koranzo, Kashi Moshi to be Sheni, Susi Shembe Jumdish Labdegero. Kashi Nelobang Sigitos and Shem Gorwa, Tirit Mishigi. And Susi Toma Dichada, Ya Kawaching, Kawanisum Matoma Inza, Kodotuma, Ya Chikta, and Pena Petangosha, and Pena Chignetada. Oh, that dinner someday Tangonia Tomazan, dinner tarishes. Tamanya Matomazan, dinner is a deep bird machine, Mindus Lagdora.
Yeah. These, some are using this because of their experience of clairvoyance. They come to these views, and some have these views because their teacher said so. So, for example, if you can only see one past life, you might not be able to see lives 2 and 3 before. So your limit is constrained by what you can see. Limit. But I think, Philippa, your question is like valid logic or not, really.
Well, there's in particular on page 131.10, they say this view is based on logic. Yeah.
131.
Yeah, 131.
Some non-Buddhists, Penanangba Mayimba Kashik La, Charpa Tang Lung, Loburu Nangshin, Yang, Shin Gangla, Lomar Tang.
Chazan, there's a Chabatan, there's a top dog Chazan, there's a Juyom Resla, or Parakona, Lubit Chumores.
Yeah, Yenang Dijela, Di Kurangi, Modi, Konzo Gimse. That's right. Their logic is not correct. It's their logic. It's still logic. They're saying because that they believe from their logic that the rain falls adventitiously. Yeah, from their point of view, their logic is perfect.
Rồi ngon rồi tanda. You have.
I'm agreeing.
Same.
It's the same as like science. You're limited on what you know. If that sounds logical now, 50 years it won't sound logical.
You're right. Similar, they say big one is beginning, but you're now searching, not really beginning this one, you know. If today people believe that, lost people believe that. Oh yeah, that is how.
Thanks, Krishna.
Yeah.
Page 31 for the short mandala. Page 33, prayers of dedication. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise in growth, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhas stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma, Tsongkhapa's way of Dharma practice flourish,